Welcome to the Black Male Impact. Today we have as guest Dr. Stacy Worley. Dr. Worley, welcome to the Black Male Impact.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. It's a pleasure to be here on the Black Male Impact this evening.
Man, it's a pleasure having you here. Dr. Worley is the director at Dayton Public School, Cultural Engagement and Inclusion, and he's also the director of the Backbone Lead, My Brother's Keeper, also in Dayton. Welcome, and please share more with the listeners so we can know more about you, or you can give them more information about you before we get into the conversation itself.
Yes, Dr. Cross, I'm a Daytonian. I graduated from Dayton Public Schools, got my undergrad from D Central State University, and got my bachelor's from there, and got my master's from United Theological Seminary, and as well as my doctorate from United Theological Seminary. I also serve as one of the associate ministers at the Shiloh Baptist Church here in the city. Been doing that, been an ordained minister since 2000. And I have transitioned from the financial sector, being in the financial sector for 32 years. And this is actually my fourth year in education.
Oh man, that's awesome. And being in education, one of the things that we have heard a lot, that we don't have a lot of Black men in the education system. So that's in itself is commendable of you being there to empower the next generation. And sometimes we may think it's to empower the Black male students only. But what research have said is that when Black males are in the classrooms, they don't only empower the Black male students, they empower all students, but also give other students a different perspective of Black men. So
Correct.
because you being there help them to have a different perception of who a Black man is, especially students who are of different ethnic background. So it's really important that we are there in the classroom or amongst these students so they can have a different perspective. So that leads me to my first question to you today. What is the mindset that it takes to make a positive impact?
I would say the mindset to make a positive impact, someone would need to be a great listener, for starters,
Okay.
and also be very confident in having a positive disposition at all times. Our mindset should allow us to have that positive disposition, even in unpleasant situations. Too often we allow those trials and those tribulations to bring us down. And it takes us off our path. It takes us off our trajectory of being successful. That's why it's important for us to have a positive disposition at all times. The Bible tells us in Romans 5:3, it teaches us we can rejoice too when we run into problems because they help us develop endurance. And endurance helps us develop strength. And strength helps us develop character in the hope of salvation.
And I'm glad that you shared that reminder, because when it comes to doing purposeful work, it will take a lot from us. And to endure or to stay focused, having that positive disposition as important, but more so, as you mentioned, just to remember that once we have the positive mindset, it will help in our behavior and everything that we do. Because when we are tested, it's what we believe that really help us to endure, because the journey itself will challenge you. But if you have a positive mindset, it will help you to go through even the toughest situations.
Mm-hmm.
That's important. So I really appreciate you sharing that reminder with us. And that leads me to my next question. And most of the rest of the conversation will base around Black men in particularly. So, it's just to give us a perspective and what we can do and what we're currently doing to make a difference. So my next question to you is, what advice do you have for the men listening and how they can play a role in creating positive change?
I would encourage especially our Black men listening, to get help if you're broken or you're hurting first. Because too often we go into situations broken and hurt and we never get the help. And we pour that brokenness onto someone else. I think we as Black men need to get the help that we need. And then secondly, if we're in a healthy space, um,
Okay.
be positive and engage in some type of a Black man's life. Be with them. Don't be in and out of their lives, but be in their life consistently.
I think that is important, as you mentioned, that sometimes, you know, we are broken and don't seek help. And I
Hmm.
think that's one of the stigmas when it comes to us as Black men, where we have a difficult time asking for help based on the stigma that have been placed on asking for help. As Black men, we may see it as being weak, asking for help. But I appreciate that reminder because we have seen so many men today struggling, and they go through those struggles. And sometimes it's at a really a bad situation, then we get to realize that they were actually going through difficulty because they didn't ask for support. So whilst they're going through their brokenness, and as you mentioned, when we hurt, we normally hurt other people. As you mentioned,
Hmm.
because when we're broken, that will cause us to sometimes come off to people, maybe aggressive,
Hmm.
and because we may be not dealing with what we're dealing with. And another point that you have made that I really appreciate, and I think that's something that we need to do more often, and that is find young people that we can pour in and not in and out of their life. Because for them to develop trust with us, we have to show that we are sincere about helping them. And the more we show up and the more we do what we say we're going to do, the more they can develop the trust. But if everybody gets in their life or come into their life, our lives, they and just leave, the next person that comes, they may say, you know what, man, I don't think you're going to be here. Everybody, and they may not even say, they may just start to rebel.
Hmm.
And sometimes we may wonder, why are they rebelling? They may have been hurt before and they don't want to develop that trust because they don't think the person is going to stay with them for a long time. But from your perspective, from what you just shared about these young men and needing the support, how do you find young men come to you and talk to you about their challenges, or sometimes you just have to try to figure it out based on their behavior?
It varies. I humbly serve directing, like you stated earlier, over cultural engagement inclusion. And I have 10 young men that are life coaches who are
Okay.
support the schools daily. And so they're in and out of the buildings and they establish the relationships with some of the young men on a daily basis. Um, some of the young men that we see, they come and open up because one, they finally see somebody that looks like them that they feel that they can have a relationship with. Some because of some of the trauma, being in a single parent home, being in a very marginalized situation, they have walls up. And so it's like peeling an onion. It takes a period of time. And then if you start showing triggers of someone else who came in their life and then dipped out, so to speak, they keep those walls up very tight. So
Okay.
it really varies.
And I think that's a great reminder to us as Black men who wants to be mentors, to know the importance of once they decide to be a mentor, they have to know that it comes with certain level of responsibility and that
Mhm.
these young men are looking up to them to really be around to support. I know things happen and people will have to move, based on for different reasons. But I think as Black men, we have to realize that to be mentors, it comes with a certain level of responsibility, and that the young men are looking up to us to be there, to be that support and that guide as they navigate their journey towards whatever goals they have for themselves. So, and that leads me to my next question, unless you have something else that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I would say I always tell my team, whether my female life coaches or my male, but specifically my male life coaches, this is not a punch the clock when you come to mentoring. It's 24/7,
Correct.
sometimes 25/8, because I get phone calls myself personally all throughout the day, even late at night, on the weekends. And my life coaches do as well, as they share different things with me. That tells you there is some trust established. There's a strong bond established, and they're counting on you more so than the teacher, sometimes more so than the parent, more so than their siblings at times. And so you got to be there. You can't turn it off, and you got to know that that is the sacrifice and the commitment that you have to give them.
I believe that is really important and a great reminder. Because when we're thinking about making a difference, and we have to realize it comes with again that level of responsibility. It's more than just a 9 to 5. We
Right.
have to be willing to show up even on days when we are not really working to be that support for the young people. So, and that's a great reminder. So, and that leads me to my next question. How can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative today? And you can choose whichever narrative, whichever area you want to focus on. But how can we, as Black men, help to change the narrative?
For me, I like I shared with you earlier, I came from the corporate sector. Um, for me, I saw too many men, young men, coming in the corporate sector, especially in the financial, not prepared, not being able to articulate in an interview session on what they need to do to get the position. And that was a trigger for me. I have arrived, but I was the only one that looked like me in that space. As I have come back into the educational, I have been able to pour back into some of my younger colleagues and coach them, even from this space, coach them even in the financial sector. And so now there's like 10 or 12 that I've been able to mentor in the financial world that have matriculated from college in their undergrad, matriculated with their masters, and they're doing well in that space. And we have to make that commitment that sometimes where we are, we need to pivot. I think not just that, but some to change the narrative for Black boys. We need to be more engaged in their educational journey. I think, and you alluded to it early, seeing more Black men in the school system is pivotal. Whether they are teaching, whether they're volunteering, whether they're supporting in some type of capacity, that holds volumes for young Black men. Then they change their narrative on their grades. They change the narrative on their study habits. Because they know there's some accountability now. Then they change their attitude with their behavior. Most importantly, their attendance grows up because now they're looking forward to seeing you there. And the end goal is for us is to improve the graduation rate. So if there's more Black men in those spaces, I believe that will start changing the narrative to close that graduation gap.
And that's true. It will definitely help them. But whilst I was listening to you, where you have mentioned that when the students come in, especially for jobs and stuff like that, when before you got into education, and how unprepared they were and stuff like that. But was that one of the things that really inspire you to get into education? Being the person who wants to help prepare them before they get to their destination?
Yes, and we implemented what's called Tuesday Tie Day in our circle. So on the first and third Tuesday, all of our young men was third grade all the way to 12th grade. They have to wear a shirt and tie. And it's not just about the shirt and tie. It's about what goes along with it. We teach them the etiquette pieces on how you stand up, how you look someone in the eye, how you shake their hand, how you address someone, how you open the door for a female, how you be a gentleman throughout that entire day. And what we
Wow.
have learned, even on the days that they're not supposed to dress up, they're starting to dress up on every Tuesday. So
That's right.
we're getting somewhere,
Oh yeah,
and
because
and then, hey, Doctor World, I got a new tie. My tie looks like yours now. Stuff like that. Or I got a new shirt that looks like yours. So now they're starting to change their behavior, and now they're more focused in their learning experience because they're not distracted by other things.
well, and I see great value in doing that, because even in the college setting, I after the third week of school of college, I have my students dress for 4 weeks straight professionally. And you can't believe it's the same group of students that,
Mhm.
were there in the first 3 week of school, compare, because when they dress professionally, they act accordingly. And that's one thing that I've seen. And as you alluded to, where they're now dressing on days when they're not supposed to because they love how it feel and maybe how people have addressed them when they dress professionally. And I think when it comes to changing the narrative, we have to help the next generation, to see what is possible by encouraging them to do the things that we know can help them, because sometimes they may not take those initiatives to, do the things that they should do so they can change the perception of self, because that's what that's doing. They may
Mhm.
have seen something in their community, they may have seen something on social media, but now being in the at school, they get to see themselves in a different way or in a different light. And I think that is really impactful. And I think that's how we change the narrative. It's not what we do, but what we help the next generation to do. And as you mentioned, ties, I was going to say we have a lot of ties can support what you're doing, because I've collected a lot for different initiatives. So I think getting the students those ties to help them to change their perception. So I'm in support of what you're doing to help change the narrative. And
Thank
that
you.
leads me, yeah, thank you. That leads me to my next question. And I think you have mentioned to some extent what my next question is to you. But what or who has influenced or inspired you to pursue the path that you're on?
Some of it was always being in the interviews or corporate interviews, but then there has also been a constant inner circle of men who mentored me throughout my life. My father, of course, who has gone on to be with the Lord, but then there's also been my godfather, some uncles, and then some great pastors that have been in my circle that mentor me even when I didn't realize they were mentoring me, and
Right.
being in a space where I can respect when they had to pull me to the side, pull my coattail, and tell me they didn't like what I was doing. Pastor Backus, Pastor Cunningham, Pastor Parker. These great men have always been able to just, hey, Stace, come here. I don't like that. This is how you do this. And the thing about it is, I could always call them. I can go visit them, and I think when you have an inner circle of individuals that pour into you, you know those conversations are sacred.
Correct.
Uh, you don't have to go post your emotions or what you're
Right.
going through on Twitter or X or Facebook or Instagram. You go have a conversation with a man, and they talk you through it, and they teach you how to be better. And you have to be
Mm.
okay with the chastisement that comes along with it at times. And I
Well,
think our young men don't have that to the full degree that we had.
man, you share a valuable point right there, because a lot of times when you read some of the expressions on social media, people are venting, and you be
Mhm.
wondering, do they have people around them to talk to about their challenges or what they're dealing with? And I think being available as Black men, I think that will help to change some of the challenges that we do experience. And not just we need to be available for others while others be available to us. But another point that you have made that is really important, because I don't think we all are able to take the, as you mentioned, the chastisement, the criticism,
Mhm.
and be willing to be held accountable at times. And I think that's one thing that will help us to break some of the cycles, to become better individuals, because we have to realize that, we all are learning, we all can improve. And I think having the right people around us that we know we can trust will help us better on that journey to become the best that we can be. But I think, as you mentioned those, I think those are really important points that we need to remember. that those people who have poured into us sometimes will hold us accountable so we can be better, and also be willing to have people around us who we can share the challenges that we are going through. And just to go back to what you have said in the beginning of answering the question in regards to being on the path that you're on. And I think we all need those individuals to help us to be stronger or be more grounded in whatever
Mhm.
we decide to do, whatever we decide to pursue. I do appreciate your perspective, which leads me to my next question. What is your perspective on the current climate of Black men in society today?
Ooh, Dr. Cross. The climate of Black men today, it's twofold. I mean, there are some Black men that are doing very great things. They're educating themselves. They're going on entrepreneurial pathways. They're investing. They're giving back to the community. They're pouring their all in. And then on the other hand, there are Black men that are out there destroying their communities, selling drugs, killing each other over foolishness, driving erratically, making babies without any intent of taking care of them. And there are more opportunities for Black men now than there ever was before. And we don't have enough of those that I precluded that are in those spaces that are teaching and having the dedication and the persistence to teach these young men that what we have done is create a mindset to fill up more land-bound slave ships that we call prisons. In
Mhm.
addition, the mindset and some Black men have created a divide in our own community because we're so focused on what I have, what I've accomplished. I don't need to give back. And
Mhm.
so it's twofold. And so those who are out there doing all the negative things that I mentioned, they look at those men that see they're not giving back. So why should I worry about my community? We need to get to a space where we start focusing on the struggle versus the differences. I would
Correct.
like for us to work more towards one another than against. So that's why I
Correct.
said it's twofold. Um, we are so divided within ourselves that it's crazy, and we need to reel that in.
I do agree with you wholeheartedly on everything that you have said. Where yes, we have Black men, doing great work, but we have some Black men that are still operating in the sense of how we have been perceived, and the social construction when it comes to us as Black men. But the point that you have made that I think we have to really take a grip on right now, and that is to make sure we are not dividing us. You see what I'm saying? Because if we
Mhm,
can come together and work together, despite um, the negative things that may still be happening within our ethnic group where Black men are concerned. If we come together and start work together more, and then it become more visible, some of those who are not yet seeing the possibility will see through us, who are trying to make a difference and work together. Because I think for us to change the perception, not just for ourselves, but for how other people view us, we have to paint that picture. We can't assume that others going to view us based on maybe a group that's doing, or maybe they don't even know that there are some Black men over here that are doing great work because they're not in that space. So the more visible we become, the
mhm,
more other people will change their perception. And why I say we need to become more visible, I remember when I started my journey of the doctoral degree, and I didn't start doing the research. I was shocked, to be honest with you, to the amount of Black men with doctoral degrees. I didn't know that there were so many Black men with doctoral degrees. And, I was already in education, had my master's degree, but they weren't visible. So Black men are out there that can be inspiration to the next generation. But I strongly believe, as you mentioned, we have to, come together so we can become more visible with our accomplishments and with the things that we're doing to make a difference. Because the more the world see us, the more the perspective will change. And that's what we have to do. We can't assume that they're going to go ahead and do that work for us. And
Mhm.
look, man, we're going to search for all those black men doing the work. No, we have to become visible by finding each other and what we're doing and share it with the world. And that's how we're going to change. So I really appreciate your perspective.
I want to add to that. We need to celebrate more of the academic success that our young black boys and young black men do, more so than and not taking anything away from the athletes. We
No.
do a lot. We do that. We have that down pat.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
think too often we're not transparent with our young black boys when we set them up and pill them up that they're going to be the next individual to make the NBA or the next one to make it to the NFL, when only less than 300 men get drafted combined to the NBA and the NFL. Those percentages are very, very slim for them to get in there. And then we don't make sure they understand how important it is. What is your backup plan?
Correct.
And hold them accountable to getting some type. They don't. Not everybody's fit for college. They're going to make it to college, and we need to celebrate those trade experiences as well. And we need to do a better job of that and letting them know you don't. If you're not college material, let's find what you can do and celebrate
Correct.
that. It's not a bad thing. I know
Oh,
some
no.
plumbers. I know some carpenters make more money than individuals with doctorate degrees.
Oh, yes. Oh, a lot of them. A lot. And a lot of the young people don't even realize that. And that's a
Yeah.
valid point that you make.
Yeah. And then you alluded to you knew so many who had doctorate degrees, even when the lowest completion rate for Black males is still less than all other dynamics, which is
Yep.
40%. And majority
Yep.
of that 40% are Black males with college degrees.
Yep. So, I tell you, and you share, I want to go back to that point that you've made with celebrating the education, the academic performance. I think that need to be said over and over and over because we do celebrate our athletes, black male athletes, a lot. And as you mentioned, that black males don't realize that, the percentage, as you mentioned, of who make it to professional level are so small, so minute, where I've seen a documentary, maybe 2013 or 14, where they were talking about where it's easier to become a lawyer and a doctor than to become a professional athlete. And that's not something that our black males hear a lot. But the more we
Hmm.
talk about it, or as you mentioned, the more we celebrate their academic performance, the more they will gravitate to that end, being that they can become doctors more so than to become a professional athlete based on the numbers. They have to be really great. And sometimes it's not even being the best out there because there are athletes who didn't make it to
Hmm.
professional level who are great. I watched a documentary with a guy, he was killing it in high school and he didn't make it. He had some difficulties based on his environment and it just keep going downhill after one incident and he didn't make it. And it seems like he didn't have no future because he was so focused on being a professional athlete.
Hmm.
And a lot of times, once they don't make it in as a professional athlete, they forget about everything else in life.
Right.
So we have to really and help them to see that there are many other options.
And we have that conversation with our young men all the time. We stress to them only 1.6% make it to the NFL, and that's 224 men are drafted each year, and 1.2% make it to the NBA, and that's only 60 men. That's way more men than that try out that will actually
Oh yeah.
make it. So
Oh yeah.
it's very slim, and so we stress that to it. What is your backup plan? And what is your
Yep.
backup plan to your backup plan?
And you're gonna need it.
Yeah.
You're gonna need it to not just only to be successful, but so you don't lose hope.
Right.
Because once, if certain things don't go as planned, they gonna lose hope because that's the only option they gave themselves. So, and I think, and when it comes to sports, anything can happen. You can have
Yeah.
an injury today, and that dream is no longer possible. But I think that's a great conversation around the possibility of where we need to help our young men to really focus in when it comes to their future, and just on the whole climate of Black men on a whole.
Hmm.
And that leads me to my next question, which is somewhat similar to what we have been talking about, but I'm still going to ask the question anyway. What change do you want to see amongst Black men?
I want to see one of the things, and we'll probably get to it later. One of the things that I saw and experienced in my travels to Ghana, specifically a village called Damanasi, is the unity and the love Black men have for one another, and the respect the young have for the elders, and the respect the elders have for the young. You cannot go in that village and cause a divide.
Wow.
It was just powerful. That's what I would like to see within our society here in the United States, when Black men could love on one another and lift one another. You see a young man with his head held down, go talk to him, spend some time,
Correct.
get to know him, and help him get back on track. Or you see an elderly man trying to just struggle just to get across the street. Pause what you're doing with your boys and help that young man make it across the street. And make sure he's okay once he gets across the street.
That's a valid point. I'm not old enough, or maybe young, but in maybe my generation was the last generation that really show respect to the older folks in our community. Uh, that was something that was held sacred in regards to our community, to show respect, especially to the older people, in our community and stuff like that. But I really appreciate that perspective because, again, when it comes to us moving forward, when it comes to us changing the perspective, the narrative, taking control of our story, we have to learn to have the unity amongst us. Again, if we
Yeah,
want other people to hold us to a certain standard, we need to hold ourselves and each other to that standard. And it comes with us respecting each other, and just to be there to be of support to each other. Because I
correct.
think wholeheartedly, if we can do that, it changed almost everything. Because again, we have been conditioned, and just as how we have been conditioned to see ourselves, the other groups of people have been conditioned to see us that way. And if they're going to have a different perspective, we have to do it so they can have a different perspective, that we are not living as how they have been conditioned to see us. And as you mentioned, just have unity amongst each other, be willing to uplift each other. Man, that will change a whole lot
Hmm.
when it comes to making a difference, when it comes to moving forward, when it comes to give the next generation something else to look forward to. It will just change the narrative, almost completely. And I think that's something that we need to get more comfortable with doing when it comes to us as Black men. But that's a great point. And just by you going to Africa itself and to see it play out and how important it is for them, I think if we can establish that, and things will change. And I think not only that, too, as you mentioned, with a part of the point that you have made, where Black men may not see others doing it, and they may refuse to do it because others are not doing it. And we have to be willing to do what we know will make a difference, regardless of how many
Correct.
Black men are doing it, because others will catch on. in due time. But we have to be willing to, do what we know will make a difference, regardless of how many of us doing it. Yeah, I think that is important. And my next question is, what was a pivotal moment in your life?
I would say a pivotal and joyous moment for me, and we kind of touched on a lot of it, is one, being a father
Okay.
of two beautiful adult women now, and a strong young black king, and being there for them, having that emulated in my life with those who were in my inner circle, those men, always being home every night. I watched that, and seeing my dad every night. That was a must for me, because
Correct.
being a father, you don't, it doesn't come with a book. I mean, you have the Bible, yes, but
You learn on the job.
you don't have another how-to book. And so,
Yeah.
but watching the Bible lived out through those elders that I had around in my circle, taught me how to be a father that listened, a father that loved, and also a father that learned from your kids too, because we're never too old to learn, and then take advice and give it, in a way that's loving and respected. The other thing was, being called to ministry. That was a big, tall, task, and it still is each and every day. And so I know, for me, a lot of people won't see the Bible the way I see it. So I have to live it and walk it and talk it each and every day. And that may my how my actions are, how my engagement are with them, may draw them closer to Christ. Is my hope. I don't go Bible thumping to them. I just live the way he wants me to live. And I feel that gives him glory each and every day on how I treat and pour back into young black men and young black women. But
Well,
lastly, I would say lastly is, again, my time in Ghana, being around that unity. But the one thing that I didn't get to stress was that unity among the men taught you how to respect the females.
wow,
And I never saw any disrespect towards any female my time there. And I
wow,
think once you learn how to respect men and love one another in that unity, you automatically respect that black female in a
correct.
way that's totally different than you're exposed to now. And you treat her like the queen that she's supposed to be.
And that says a lot, because a lot of times I think self-respect goes a long way with everything that we do.
Right.
Because a part of not respecting yourself will cause you not to respect others. So I do believe self-respect is key, and that extend to those around us, and also will extend to the female as a great part of our whole existence. But one thing that you have said that I really want to just go back over, as you were talking about the pivotal moment in your life, outside of your family and the people that you meet and the people that you're around, is that you live what you're telling other people. You see what I'm saying? Because I think that is important. If we want the people around us to live a certain way, it's not just what we tell them, but what we show them through
Mm.
our actions. And I do believe that strongly. And once we can model the what we are saying, we can actually get more people to change. I believe that wholeheartedly. We must model the message that we are sharing with other people. I think that is very, very important. And that leads me to my next question. What life lesson have you learned late in life that you believe is important and can benefit this current generation?
I would say, after bumping my head a few times, in life, I wouldn't say not too didn't take me a long time to figure it out, but I did figure it out. Ephesians 15 to 16 teaches us to be very careful, be very wise in how you live rather than being unwise. And I think too often I had to learn, it's not about the materialistic things. It's about the life you're living in that moment. Are you
Correct.
living for the things? Or are you living for life? And when you learn how to be wise into the things that you really don't need, and start experiencing those memories and those people who have transition away from you and they have transitioned out of this life, out of this world, you learn the conversations mean everything. Those experiences mean everything. And all the money and the cars and the houses and all that other stuff really don't amount to anything when you have those experiences and that value time. So be very careful how you spend your time is basically what I'm trying to say. And be very careful how you spend others people's time. Don't waste people's time. Be engaged in people's lives and pour into them as you would expect somebody to pour into you or your loved ones.
Yeah, I think that is important. How we spend our time is important because that's one thing we cannot get back. But as you mentioned, that we still have to be mindful about everything as we go on this journey, because we only have this time, and it's not only about things, but
Mhm.
the experience we have with the people, especially those closest to us, that matters most. And sometimes we get a bit distracted with things. But once you start accumulating things, you realize that life is more than about things. And sometimes you have to kind of get to the point where you realize that, oh man, it's not just about the things, because you find that there are people out there with a lot of things and still feel empty, still feel lonely, because their sole focus were mostly about gathering the things that they feel they need, and
Mm.
forget about the people closest, and that didn't really spend a lot of quality time with people close to them. So I think that's a great reminder to all of us that are living, that the time we spend with people is more valuable than just chasing things. And that leads me to my next question, before I ask my final question. Where can the listeners find you and help support your work to make a difference?
They can find me at Dayton Public Schools, S. Worley at DaytonPublic.com, where I serve humbly, like I stated earlier, as a director of the Office of Cultural Engagement and Inclusion, which actually oversees the Males of Color and the Females of Color initiative. Also, you can find me at that email where you can reach me because I serve also as a director for MBK Dayton and MSK Dayton, my brother's keeper Dayton and my sister's keeper Dayton, where we serve those students all throughout Montgomery County.
All right. I will make sure it is in the description. So whenever they listen to this conversation, they can reach out to you to connect with you and to support you in whatever way they can support you. And so, my final question is, what impact do you want to have on the world?
The impact I want to have on the world is, for one, there's too much talent trapped in poverty. I
Hmm.
want to be a game changer in tapping into that talent and putting that talent on the platform that needs to be seen.
Man, I want you to say that one more time because it is so profound what you just said. Could you say it again?
Yes, I want to tap into. There's too much talent trapped in poverty, and I want to be able to tap into it and place it on a platform where it can be seen.
Man,
Our
that is
young
that.
our young boys and our young ladies, especially our young boys, need investment. And too often we have the tools, we have the resources, but we don't pour it back into our young people.
Man, that is so powerful right there. There's so much talent trapped in poverty. That is so powerful right there because so many of our young people are in spaces, all they need is the opportunity to become great. And if
Yes.
they don't get the opportunity, their greatness stays within. Man, that is powerful right there. That is so powerful because, you know, even looking back and where I'm from, there were so many young people, so many who displayed great ability. Because for me, I wasn't doing well in school. And I had friends who could easily become doctors, easily become lawyers, and didn't get an opportunity because their parents couldn't afford it. And that's one of the reasons why I do the things that I do, to be honest with you, because it wasn't because I was the smartest or the most talented athlete. I like to tell people when I go places to speak, God grace is so it's beyond what you can explain. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't that I was smart or the smartest or the most talented. It was just the grace that get me out of the environment that I grew up in. And but there were so many young people, and I really like that perspective. I really like that perspective. Thanks for sharing it, because it's on my heart right now. Because when you look back to, especially for me, to be honest with you, I know that's one of the challenges, especially within our communities here in Jamaica and stuff like that. The young people, all they need, and here in the United States, in the underserved communities, all some of these kids need is an opportunity to become who they're capable of becoming. So I really appreciate you sharing that perspective or that desire to make a difference for those students who have in communities that don't have all the resources they need to be the best they can be.
Thank you, Dr. Cross. It's been a great privilege and a pleasure to be on the show with you today.
Man, it's a pleasure. You have shared a lot of great insights and perspective that I believe is beneficial to us, from having a positive mindset, which is important if we're thinking about making a positive impact. And just to realize as Black men, if we are broken, that we can reach out to others more than just be walking around being broken. Because
Hmm.
if we walk around be broken and don't ask for help, that's not going to benefit us, and it's not going to benefit those people around us. So I really appreciate you, Dr. Worley, for being here on the Black Male Impact, and I know the listeners will as well. So thanks again for being here with us on the Black Male Impact.
Thank you, sir.
And always, listeners, please continue to support us in whatever way possible as we continue to bring guests that we believe will help you along your journey to make a difference and to realize that more is possible for you. Please continue to support us as we continue on this journey to make a positive impact. Thank you for being here with us.